When people talk about American performance cars from the 70s, the narrative is usually framed as a decline. Horsepower was down, regulations were tightening, and the golden age was supposedly over. But that way of thinking ignores cars like the 1974 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. This wasn't a car that gave up. It was a car that adapted. And in many ways, that makes it more interesting than the legends that came before it. By 1974, the automotive industry was under pressure from all sides. Emissions regulations were cutting compression ratios. Insurance companies were punishing high-performance models, and the fuel crisis was already looming. Many manufacturers softened their performance cars or dropped them entirely. Pontiac, however, chose a different approach. Instead of chasing numbers, they focused on character. The Trans Am became less about raw horsepower and more about how the car felt, how it looked, and how it made you feel behind the wheel. The second-generation Firebird design, introduced in 1970, was still one of the most striking shapes on American roads. Long, low, and wide, it looked closer to a European GT car than a traditional muscle car. For 1974, new federal safety standards brought the large, color-matched front bumper. While controversial, it blended better than most people remember and actually gave the car a more solid, planted appearance. The split grille, aggressive hood scoops, and subtle fender flares all worked together to give the Trans Am a serious, purposeful stance. Compared to earlier Firebirds, this car felt more mature. Compared to later, decal-heavy Trans Ams, it was cleaner and more restrained. Inside, the Trans Am remained focused on the driver. You sit low, looking out over that long hood, immediately feeling connected to the car. The bucket seats were firm and supportive, designed for real driving rather than showroom comfort. The dashboard was simple and functional, with round gauges that were easy to read at a glance. There was no fake luxury here, just honest materials and a layout that made sense. Options like air conditioning, power windows, and tilt steering were available. But even a well-optioned Trans Am never forgot that it was a performance car first. Under the hood is where the 1974 Trans Am often gets misunderstood. The standard engine was the 400 cubic inch V8, rated at around 185 net horsepower. On paper, that sounds disappointing, especially if you compare it to the late 60s numbers. But horsepower figures don't tell the whole story. The 400 still delivered strong low-end torque, which made the car feel responsive and enjoyable in everyday driving. It wasn't about high RPM drama anymore. It was about usable power. Then there was the Super Duty 455. This engine was something special, even by Pontiac standards. Built with heavy-duty internals and designed to survive under far harsher conditions than most street engines, it was officially rated at 290 net horsepower. Most enthusiasts agree that number was conservative. In real-world driving, an SD 455 Trans Am feels genuinely quick, with strong acceleration and a deep, authoritative exhaust note. It was one of the last true high-performance engines of the era, and Pontiac knew it. Transmission choices included a 4-speed manual and a 3-speed automatic. The manual gives the car its most engaging personality, letting the driver fully enjoy the engine's torque and sound. The automatic, while less exciting, suits the Trans Am's relaxed cruising nature and makes it a very comfortable long-distance car. On the road, the 1974 Trans Am feels solid and confident. The suspension is firm but compliant. The steering is heavy but communicative, and the car feels stable at highway speeds. This isn't a lightweight sports car, and it doesn't try to be. It's a grand touring muscle car, built to cover long distances quickly and comfortably. Compared to rivals like the Camaro Z28 or Mustang Mach-1, the Trans Am stands out for its personality. It feels more serious, more intentional. And when you look at earlier and later Trans Ams, the 1974 model sits right in the middle of the story. It still has the purity of the early cars, without the excess and compromises that came later. Today, the 1974 Trans Am remains an appealing classic. Prices are rising, especially for Super Duty cars, but standard 400 models are still attainable. Ownership does come with realities, maintenance, fuel costs, and age-related issues. but what you get in return is a car with real soul. The 1974 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am may not shout about its place in history, but it doesn't need to. It represents a moment when performance cars refuse to disappear, choosing instead to evolve. And sometimes those are the cars that age the best.